What's up? Beggars Night! Bringing you Chapter 2! Burnt Glasses! Tales from the South Side. You're gonna find out about the RL Cartel, who came up with that shit, and drop a few other details. So sit back. Okay, today's been quite a day since I released those videos. Let's just say it's all about creating a buzz, you know. And like I say, if I'm not in the news, I'm bringing it. So check it. I got this test I got to do next week on the 7th. It's called a neuropsychological evaluation. Okay, now the MS has progressed pretty far with me to where when I sleep, my legs go numb. When I wake up, it takes me a little while to get the feeling back in my legs. I can't sleep for more than 2 or 3 hours. I'm going through a lot, and on top of the PTSD, I had lost my son 5 years ago. 5 years ago plus, my son Joey, rest in peace. And not everybody walks in on their son with a fucking dead, when he's dead with the fucking needle in his arm when you come in from out of town. But that's the shit that went down with me. So I need some fucking help. So I can't fucking work. I can't. How do you go to work on fucking 2 hours sleep? Okay, and then I got to walk to the bus, and then to the building I'm working at, which never was a problem. Even if it's a half a mile, I got to stop and rest half the distance. And by the time I'm going to get to my desk, I'm going to be exhausted. It's just ridiculous. So I'm going for this test on the 7th. I got an appeal for my disability. I got some attorney in Denver. It's a disability attorney. It's kind of the way shit rolls with disability. Unless you're laid up in a hospital bed, with your legs cut off or some shit. So, to the story on the RL cartel, and it's actually pretty good. So, I believe it was like February of '92. I was back in Iowa. It was about a month before we all met up in Vegas. Me and my brother-in-law met Catfish and Dewey up there in Vegas. But it was about a month or so before. I was back in Des Moines collecting some money, rolling around with Woodard and Joel. I think Joel was driving, and then Woodard was in the back or out something. But here was the deal. When you brought 50 to 100 pounds into town, every couple months, a lot of people were smoking your weed, and a lot of people were trying to get your weed, and so, and everybody, you had to know somebody to get it from somebody. So everybody had their boy. So like Woodard would have his boy, but Woodard would have to go to Joel to get his, and people would they couldn't go directly to somebody else, okay, to get 5 or whatever, So we're rolling down. We were going south on Southwest 9th. I know I can remember it precisely because we're all just bullshitting. Joel's driving. Woodard's talking about the game in Des Moines, about people being shady and this and that, and just different stuff. But he says, "Man, somebody had some bud, or Joe had some new bud." He said, "Where'd you get that?" And Joey's like, "RL Cartel." I like, fucking what? I snapped my neck back. I was like, Motherfucker, RL Cartel. I have never fucking owned a fucking gun. And truth be told, at the time, my employer, rest in peace, Frank Tascano, he ran a set down in Tucson, the Tascano-Montana Mafia. So you can look that up. You know, just Google it, Frank Tascano. So anyway, that's the story of the RL cartel, and we're gonna get into this chapter 2, the $1 Million Man in the World Series. Let's see if I can get the $1 Million Man dialed in for you. The World Series. See where we're at here. There it is. Okay. So, seeing how Frankie and Tom could only hang out in secret, it was just Frankie and me running together again. Before school, after school, Frankie started hanging out over at Joel Baker's house. And there's 3 friendships between me, Frankie, and Joel Baker. You know, they became the nucleus of the RL cartel. Uh, it was late August and Labor Day weekend coming up. It was a week after the last situation. Uh, Frankie was going to try and go to tech for 10th grade as a welder. Uh, Joel to Washington, which is Lincoln on the south side. And I went to Bishop Dowling. I call it in the book Bishop, but I went to Dowling on the Catholic high school on the south side. It was my second year there. It was 10th grade. Uh, Frankie and I played a few pranks on Tom in over the next 2 weeks. Uh, we spray painted a cross on the sidewalk, called a few cabs and pizzas and a few tow trucks over to Tom's. Tom's little sister, Tracy, wanted to go out with me. She was only in 8th grade, so basically I just messed with her head. And all because Frankie said, Tom put the entire blame on me, masterminding the breaking and entering. So we're going to fuck with him. I said, sure. Now, you think the harassment had been enough. We just couldn't stop. I came up with this idea to hang a freaking sign in his yard with a bunch of satanic shit written in red and black. Frankie and I cut our fingers to leave blood stains on this pillowcase we would hang there in his front yard. We had 3 666s and didn't yet know what a pentagram was until Motley Crue. And some references to Ozzy and Zeppelin. So I'd call Tracy Leaf, Tom's little sis, the next day and get the lowdown. I almost had her talking to stealing Tom's bong and weed and blah, blah, blah. It never happened. Her stealing his stash. She wasn't minded to begin with anyway. What happened most next, I know forever changed my life. Not knowing at the time, but it did. So for some reason, I had come up to burn a cross in Tom's yard. Not a wooden cross like they do down south. Just gasoline poured onto the grass, leave a mark on the side, get replaced. So the weekend prior to Labor Day weekend, Frankie and I decided to carry out the plan. It was like 10:30 that night. We headed over through a few blocks in the neighborhood on our BMX bikes. Frankie had a moped too. Too loud, we thought. Stopping on the side of the house, we had a perfect spot. Tom's house was a two-story with no windows to the north, and his neighbor's to the north was the side of a garage. So using a milk jug, I poured a line of gasoline about 3 feet long, about 10 inches wide, and used the remaining fuel to make the sign of the cross. The last two, the Holy Ghost, just what the fuck is the Holy Ghost? Okay. After we threw the match, we flew on our bikes like we'd seen a ghost. It would be 2 days before anyone discovered our deed. Who did it? Why'd they do it? The neighbors would ask. The least would happen. So, Labor Day weekend, before I left town Saturday morning to a family reunion, at my aunt's, my parents insisted I go. Friday night, Frankie and me surveyed the scene. On the side of the house, burnt deep in the grass, a burnt black cross was there, and we marveled at our deed. And we joked among ourselves as we rode our bikes away. I would look back Sunday afternoon and we would talk back then when I got back in town from the reunion. Said, "See you Sunday," I told Frankie, and I rode home. So that's chapter 2. Chapter 2, Burnt Crosses, Tales from the South Side. Well, you're gonna really like chapter 3. So since it's Beggars Night, I figured I'd do things right in style.